There is a particular moment, somewhere between the last light of evening and the full arrival of night, when the world outside grows very still. The sky deepens slowly from pale blue to grey, from grey to the soft, deep dark of a clear night. One by one, the stars appear. Not all at once, but gradually, the way things tend to happen in nature, quietly and without any hurry. The air cools a little. Somewhere outside, a breeze moves through the leaves of a tree and then settles again. The sounds of the day, distant traffic, voices, the small busyness of afternoon have all faded now. What remains is something much gentler, the low sound of the night itself. This is the world as it is right now, while you are here, warm and still. For thousands of years, long before electric light changed our evenings, human beings ended their days this way, lying down as the darkness arrived, listening to the night settle around them. There was comfort in it, a sense that the world was simply doing what it had always done, and it still is. Out there, beyond the walls of wherever you are resting, the natural world is shifting into its nighttime rhythm. Animals that spent the day tucked away in hollow trees, beneath cool rocks, or deep in their burrows, are beginning to stir. Others, the ones who have been quietly active all day, are finding their own places to rest, folding themselves into sleep the way you are doing now. The night belongs to all of them, in their own soft and unhurried ways. Over the next little while, we will drift together through some of those quiet corners of the world. Forests in the hours after sunset, the surface of a dark, calm ocean, a desert cooling beneath an open sky full of stars. There is nothing to follow closely, nothing to remember. These are simply places to rest inside, gently, for a while. All that is needed now is to be exactly where you are. Comfortable, still, breathing slowly. The night is here, and it is very calm. As the last light fades and the night becomes complete, most of us close our eyes and let the darkness in. But for many animals, the arrival of darkness is simply the beginning of a very ordinary day. They have lived in the dark for so long that their bodies have quietly adapted over many generations to suit it perfectly. Not through any dramatic change, but through the slow, patient work of nature, adjusting, refining, settling into what works. One of the most common of these adaptations involves the eye itself. The eyes of many nocturnal animals are noticeably larger than those of animals active in daylight. Larger eyes can gather more light the same way a wide-open window lets in more of the evening than a narrow one. The pupils, too, can open very wide, allowing as much light as possible to reach the back of the eye, even on a night with very little moonlight. But there is something else, deeper inside the eye, that makes night vision possible in ways that are quite remarkable. Behind the retina, the light-sensitive surface at the back of the eye, many nocturnal animals have a thin, reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum. It is a Latin phrase that means, roughly, bright tapestry. What it does is simple and effective. Any light that passes through the retina without being detected on the first pass is reflected back again, giving the eye a second opportunity to use it. This is what creates eye shine, the soft glow you sometimes see in the eyes of a cat or a deer caught briefly in a beam of light at night. That glow is light being returned, gently, from deep within the eye. It is not produced by the animal. It is simply the night's own light, given back. Cats have it, deer have it, many fish, and a great number of nocturnal insects have their own versions of it. Each one slightly different in color, green, gold, pale blue depending on the animal, and the way its particular tapetum is arranged. It is a quiet piece of engineering, efficient and unhurried. Still, for some animals, even the most sensitive eyes are not the primary tool for navigating the dark. For the barn owl, the night is understood almost entirely through sound. The barn owl is a medium-sized bird, pale and soft-feathered, with a face shaped in a way that is quite distinctive, a wide, rounded disc of feathers, almost heart-shaped when seen head-on. That shape is not simply appearance, it is function. The facial disc of a barn owl works in a way that is not unlike a satellite dish. It gathers sound waves from the surrounding air and channels them toward the owl's ears, which are positioned slightly asymmetrically on either side of its head, one a little higher than the other. This small difference in placement means that sounds arrive at each ear at fractionally different moments, and it is this difference measured in thousandths of a second that allows the owl to locate the precise origin of a sound in 3 dimensions. In experiments conducted in completely darkened rooms, barn owls have been shown to locate and catch prey with no light whatsoever. No moonlight, no starlight, no reflected glow of any kind. Sound alone was sufficient. The owl hears the faint movement of a small animal beneath a layer of snow or dry leaves. It calculates, without effort, the angle and distance, and then it moves through the dark with very little sound of its own, its flight feathers shaped in a way that absorbs noise rather than creating it. It is a calm kind of precision, patient and very quiet. Beyond sight and sound, the night is also filled with forms of communication that are largely invisible to us. Many animals exchange information across the dark in ways that require no sound and no light at all. Bats, as most people know, use echolocation, sending out pulses of ultrasonic sound and listening for the way those sounds return, changed by whatever they have encountered. It is a way of seeing with hearing, and it happens at frequencies far above what the human ear can detect. To stand in a field at night near a group of foraging bats is to be surrounded by a dense, active world of sound that remains entirely beyond the range of human perception. Moths, which are among the most common of all nocturnal insects, communicate through chemical signals carried on the night air. A female moth will release a very small amount of a particular chemical, and a male moth, miles away, can detect it through sensory receptors on his antennae. The signal drifts quietly through the dark, and the moth follows it, gently and without urgency, toward its source. And beneath all of this, beneath the movement of wings and the drift of chemical signals, the ground itself carries information. Earthworms sense vibrations in the soil. Elephants, at much larger scale, communicate through low-frequency rumbles that travel through the earth itself, felt more than heard, over distances of several miles. The night, in this way, is not an absence of things. It is simply a different kind of fullness, quieter, slower, and using languages that are easy to miss if one is not already still. Which is a comfortable thought, perhaps, as the night settles in around you now. The world outside is full of soft activity, going about its gentle business, the way it always has. Somewhere not very far from where most of us live, there is a forest that has been quietly going about its nighttime business for a very long time. It does not look the way it does in the afternoon. The colours are gone, or nearly so, replaced by softer shades of grey and silver. The pale light of the moon filtering down through the canopy in uneven patches, settling here and there on the ground below. The forest at night is the same forest, only quieter, only slower, and it is full of life. Among the first animals you might notice, if you were sitting very still at the edge of such a forest, would be the deer. Deer are most active in the hours just after sunset and just before sunrise, a pattern that researchers refer to as crepuscular, meaning they favour the low light hours at either end of the day. But through the night itself, they continue to move, quietly and without urgency, following paths through the underbrush that they know well from long familiarity. A deer moving through a forest at night is a very calm thing to observe. Its steps are careful and deliberate. It pauses often, standing completely still, ears turned slightly to gather sound from different directions. Its eyes, large and dark and set wide on either side of its head, are well suited to low light, gathering what little moonlight filters through the trees and using it efficiently. Deer do not rush. They move from one place to another in their own time, browsing on low vegetation, young leaves, the occasional fallen fruit. When they are undisturbed, there is a quietness to their movement that seems very much in keeping with the hour. Closer to the ground, at the level of the leaf litter, another animal is going about its evening in an equally unhurried way. The hedgehog is a small mammal, typically no longer than a hand, covered on its upper surface with a dense coat of short, firm spines, modified hairs, made rigid over many generations of evolution. It spends the daylight hours sleeping in a nest of leaves and grass, tucked beneath a hedge or the roots of an old tree. As the evening arrives, it wakes slowly and begins to move. A foraging hedgehog does not cover ground quickly. It moves with a low, shuffling gait, its nose close to the earth, following scent trails through the fallen leaves. It is searching for beetles, earthworms, the occasional small slug, the modest, reliable foods of the forest floor. Its hearing is good, and it pauses often to listen, tilting its small head to one side. There is something particularly restful about watching a hedgehog forage. Its pace is so consistent, its focus so complete, that it creates a kind of rhythm, the soft rustle of leaves, a pause, the rustle again, slow and repeated, and entirely undramatic. Above the hedgehog, in the airspace between the forest floor and the lower branches of the trees, moths are moving. Moths are among the most numerous of all nocturnal insects. There are, by current scientific estimates, somewhere in the region of 160,000 known species of moth worldwide, and likely many more yet to be described. On a mild night in a temperate forest, dozens of species may be active at the same time, each going about its particular business with quiet efficiency. Many moths are pollinators. They visit flowers in much the same way that bees and butterflies do during the day, drinking nectar and, in the process, carrying pollen from one flower to another. Some flowers have evolved specifically for moth pollination, opening only at night and producing their fragrance after dark, when their particular visitors are most likely to be present. The moth does not know it is pollinating. It is simply following scent toward food. The transfer of pollen is incidental, a gentle consequence of the moth going about its evening. And yet, for the plant, it is essential. This is how much of the natural world operates. Day and night, not through grand purpose, but through the quiet overlapping of small needs and habits, each one influencing the others in ways that are patient and cumulative. Below all of this, on and within the forest floor itself, the night's work continues at an even slower pace. Ground beetles move through the leaf litter, navigating by scent and touch. Earthworms draw themselves through the soil, aerating it, processing the organic matter within it, performing the slow and continuous work of decomposition that keeps the forest healthy. They have been doing this, in one form or another, for hundreds of millions of years. And then there is the fungi. Most of what a fungus is cannot be seen. The visible part, the mushroom, if it produces one, is only the reproductive structure, the part that appears briefly above the surface to release spores. The main body of the fungus is a network of very fine threads, called mycelium, spread through the soil and the decaying wood of the forest floor. In some forests, this network connects the roots of many different trees, allowing nutrients and even chemical signals to pass between them, slowly and without interruption, through the dark. The forest floor at night is, in this way, a place of considerable activity, not loud activity, not dramatic activity, but the slow, steady, essential work of breaking down, recycling, and renewing. The kind of work that takes years, or decades, or longer, unhurried, and entirely reliable. It is restful to think about, in its way. The forest outside continuing its quiet work, the deer stepping softly between the trees, the hedgehog making its careful way through the leaves, the moths drifting from flower to flower in the cool air. All of it gentle, all of it slow, all of it part of the same calm night. Far from the forest, beyond the edges of the land, the ocean stretches out in every direction under the night sky. Its surface moves in long, slow swells. The water is dark and very deep and almost entirely quiet. And within it, something is rising. Every night, in oceans all over the world, an event takes place that is so large and so consistent that scientists consider it one of the greatest daily migrations on the planet. And yet it happens slowly and without any visible drama in the dark water far from shore. As sunlight fades from the upper ocean, enormous numbers of tiny animals, zooplankton, small fish, and other minute creatures begin to drift upward from the depths where they have spent the daylight hours. They rise gradually, following the fading light in reverse, moving toward the surface as the surface grows darker. It is a journey measured not in miles but in hundreds of meters, and it takes place at a pace that is almost imperceptible. By full dark, the upper layers of the ocean are populated by vast numbers of these small creatures, feeding on the microscopic plant life near the surface, in the cool and sheltered dark. And then, before dawn, they will descend again, sinking slowly back into the deeper water, following the same quiet rhythm they have followed every day for an extremely long time. It is a movement driven by light and by the absence of light, calm, reliable, and very old. Beneath the surface of this drifting world, there is light of another kind. Bioluminescence, the production of light by living organisms, is far more common in the ocean than many people realize. A large proportion of marine creatures are capable of producing their own light through chemical reactions that occur within their cells. The light produced is cool and soft, and it is made without heat, without combustion, without any of the processes we typically associate with light production. Among the most widespread producers of bioluminescent light are the dinoflagellates, single-celled organisms, neither quite plant nor quite animal, that drift in enormous numbers near the ocean surface. When disturbed by a wave, by a current, by anything moving through the water, they emit a brief blue-green glow. On certain coastlines, on certain nights, the breaking of a wave will light up faintly as it moves through a dense population of these organisms. The light lasts only a moment, and then it fades. Deeper down, where sunlight never reaches at all, other creatures carry their own light with them through the permanent dark. Certain species of jellyfish pulse with a slow, dim glow as they drift through the water, not swimming exactly, but contracting and relaxing in a rhythm that is very gradual, very regular. Their light serves various purposes depending on the species, attracting prey, communicating with others, or perhaps simply a consequence of chemical processes within their bodies that science has not yet fully understood. There is no urgency to any of it. The deep ocean moves at its own pace, which is generally very slow. At the surface, far above the jellyfish and the glowing plankton, a sea turtle is making its way across open water. Sea turtles are long-distance travelers. Some species cross entire ocean basins over the course of their lives, returning after many years to the same beaches where they were born, navigating distances of thousands of miles with a consistency that continues to be studied and discussed by researchers. How they find their way across such distances with such accuracy involves several factors, among them sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field, which gives them a kind of internal map. But on a clear night, near the surface, sea turtles also appear to orient themselves in part by the light of the sky. The stars, the glow of the horizon, the position of the moon, these are all sources of information that a turtle moving slowly through the dark water can use to maintain its direction. The turtle does not hurry. It surfaces periodically to breathe a slow rise, a breath, a gentle descent back below the surface, and then continues on its way. The ocean is wide, and the journey is long, and the turtle moves through it with a patience that seems entirely natural to the animal and the environment it inhabits. Far below the turtle, far below the migrating plankton and the drifting jellyfish, the ocean floor lies in complete and permanent darkness. Here, the temperatures are very cold, the pressure is very high, and the pace of life is perhaps the slowest of any environment on Earth. Sea cucumbers, soft, cylindrical animals move across the sediment so slowly that their movement is difficult to detect without time-lapse observation. They feed by processing the sediment itself, extracting the small amounts of organic material within it and passing the rest behind them. It is patient, methodical work, and it keeps the deep ocean floor in balance. Starfish move across rocks and sediment with the same unhurried quality. Their locomotion is powered by hundreds of tiny tube feet, each one extending and contracting in a coordinated way that produces movements so gradual it seems more like drifting than walking. Some species of starfish take several minutes to travel the length of a single human arm. They have been going about this slow work for a very long time. The basic form of the starfish has remained largely unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Whatever they are doing, it appears to be working. The deep ocean floor, then, is a place of extreme quiet and extreme patience, where the cold is constant and the dark is complete, and the animals that live there move through their lives at a pace that asks nothing of the observer except stillness, which is, perhaps, exactly the right thing to think about now. The ocean out there, wide and dark and deep, small lights drifting in the current, a turtle moving slowly across the surface. Far below, the patient work of creatures that have never needed anything to be hurried, quiet, and very calm. At some point in the night, the animals we have been following, the deer in the forest, the turtle crossing the dark water, the hedgehog making its way through the leaves, will each find a place to rest. They will slow down, grow still, and allow their bodies to do what bodies, across almost all of life on Earth, eventually need to do. They will sleep. Sleep is not a uniquely human experience. It is, in fact, one of the most widespread and consistent behaviors in the animal kingdom. Nearly every animal that scientists have studied closely shows some form of rest, a regular period of reduced activity, lowered responsiveness to the outside world, and what appears to be a necessary pause in the business of being alive. Why sleep exists, in a biological sense, is a question that researchers are still working to fully answer. What is clear is that it is essential. Animals deprived of sleep in careful laboratory studies consistently show signs of physical and cognitive decline. The need for rest is not optional. It appears to be written into the fundamental requirements of animal life, at a level that is very deep and very old. How animals sleep, however, varies in ways that are quietly interesting. In the ocean, dolphins and whales face a particular challenge that land animals do not. They are air-breathing mammals living in water, which means that even during rest, some part of them must remain aware enough to surface and breathe, sinking into the kind of deep, complete unconsciousness that a sleeping human experiences would, for a dolphin, be genuinely dangerous. The solution that dolphins and many whales have arrived at is called uni-hemispheric sleep. During rest, one hemisphere of the brain, one half reduces its activity and enters a sleep-like state, while the other hemisphere remains alert and active. After a period of time, the two hemispheres switch. The resting half wakes, and the active half takes its turn to rest. The result is an animal that is, in a sense, always half asleep and half awake. A resting dolphin may swim slowly in circles near the surface, one eye open and one eye closed, each eye connected to the opposite hemisphere of the brain, one of which is resting and one of which is gently attending to the world. It is a very practical arrangement, and in its own way, a rather peaceful one. Birds have developed their own solution to the challenge of sleeping in an environment that requires some degree of vigilance. Many birds sleep while perched on a branch. This might seem precarious, a small animal balanced on a narrow surface, eyes closed, with nothing holding it in place. But the anatomy of a perching bird makes this arrangement quite secure. When a bird lands on a branch and bends its legs, tendons running down through the leg and foot automatically tighten, causing the toes to curl and grip. The grip is maintained without any muscular effort. It is a passive, mechanical lock, held in place simply by the weight of the bird itself. This means that a sleeping bird sitting on a branch is not actively holding on. It is, in a very literal sense, locked in place. It can relax completely, and its feet will not release until it straightens its legs again upon waking. Some species of bird, particularly migratory species that spend long periods in flight over open ocean, appear capable of sleeping during flight itself, one hemisphere at a time, in a manner not entirely unlike the dolphins. The details of how this works are still being studied, but the evidence suggests that the capacity for partial sleep, for rest taken in installments, is something that has evolved independently in more than one group of animals. Nature, it seems, finds ways. In the water, fish rest in their own quiet fashion. Fish do not have eyelids, and so they cannot close their eyes in the way that mammals and birds do. But many species of fish enter a state of greatly reduced activity during certain hours, drifting almost motionless in the water. Their metabolic rate lowered, their responsiveness to external stimuli decreased. They are not fully unconscious in the way a sleeping mammal might be, but they are resting in the way that their particular biology allows. Some reef fish settle into crevices in the coral at night, tucking themselves into snug spaces and becoming still. Parrotfish produce a cocoon of transparent mucus around themselves before sleeping a thin, delicate envelope that may help to mask their scent from nocturnal predators. In the morning, they emerge from it and swim away, and the cocoon dissolves quietly into the water. Each species with its own version of rest, each one shaped by its particular needs and its particular environment, but all of them, in some form, pausing. The universality of sleep, the fact that it appears in fish, in birds, in mammals, in insects, and in creatures far simpler than any of these, suggests that it is not a luxury that evolution added late. It appears, instead, to be something that was present very early in the history of animal life, and that has persisted because whatever sleep does for a living body, it does something that cannot easily be replaced. The body restored. The mind, in whatever form it takes, given space to process and repair. You are doing that now, the same thing the dolphin does, drifting slowly near the surface, the same thing the small bird does, settled on its branch with its toes gently curled, the same thing animals have been doing, in one form or another, for an enormously long time. Rest is not something separate from the natural world. It is one of the most natural things in it. There are places on Earth that seem, during the middle of the day, almost entirely empty of life. The desert, under a high summer sun, can give that impression, wide and pale, and still, the ground dry, the air hot, the landscape quiet in a way that feels absolute. But the desert is not empty. Its animals are simply waiting. As the sun moves toward the horizon and the light begins to soften, something shifts. The temperature drops, sometimes quickly, by many degrees within the space of an hour or two. The sand, which absorbed heat all day, begins to release it slowly into the cooling air. The sky above deepens into the same dark blue it becomes everywhere on Earth at this hour, and then into black, and the stars appear with a clarity that is rarely seen elsewhere, because the desert air is dry and there is very little to scatter the light. And then, gradually and without announcement, the desert begins to fill. From burrows dug deep enough into the earth to stay cool through the hottest part of the day, small animals emerge. They move carefully at first, pausing at the entrance to their burrows, reading the air. Then, satisfied that the night is as it should be, they move out into the open, onto the sand that has grown cool and smooth under the stars. Among the most common of these small desert animals in the deserts of North America is the kangaroo rat. The kangaroo rat is a small rodent, small enough to fit comfortably in a human hand, with notably large hind legs relative to its body, and a long tail that it uses for balance. Its eyes are large and dark, well suited to the low light of a desert night. It moves in a series of gentle hops, covering the ground between patches of dry vegetation in small, unhurried bounds, pausing here and there to search for seeds. Seeds are the primary food of the kangaroo rat, and it collects them with considerable patience. When it finds them, it does not always eat them immediately. It tucks them into small pouches inside its cheeks and carries them back toward its burrow, where it stores them carefully. The stores it builds up over the course of many nights provide food for the dry months when seeds are harder to find. The kangaroo rat rarely, if ever, needs to drink water. It obtains the moisture it needs from the seeds it eats, and its kidneys are extraordinarily efficient at conserving what little water its body produces. It is an animal that has become, over a long period of time, very well suited to a place that seems, on the surface, to offer very little. Not far from where the kangaroo rat forages, there is a saguaro cactus. The saguaro is a tall, slow-growing cactus, one of the defining plants of the Sonoran Desert. It grows very slowly, taking many decades to reach its full height, and it can live for 150 years or more. As it ages, its thick trunk is sometimes hollowed out in sections by woodpeckers, which excavate nesting cavities in the dense, woody tissue. When a woodpecker moves on, the cavity it leaves behind becomes available to other animals. And in some of these cavities, on certain nights, there is an elf owl. The elf owl is, by most measurements, the smallest owl in the world. An adult weighs roughly as much as a golf ball. It is covered in soft brown and grey feathers, with pale eyebrows that give its small face a gentle, slightly surprised expression. During the day, it rests inside its cactus cavity, hidden from the heat. At night, it emerges and moves quietly through the desert air, hunting the large insects, moths, crickets, scorpions that are active at the same hours. The elf owl does not hoot. Its calls are soft, relatively high-pitched, and intermittent. In the quiet of a desert night, the sound is easy to miss unless you are listening for it. It moves through the air with small, quick wing beats and returns to its cactus cavity in the hours before dawn, settling back into the small, dark space where it spends its days. Below the elf owl, on the cooling sand, a scorpion is moving. Scorpions are ancient animals. Fossil evidence places their basic body plan, already very similar to what it is today, at more than 400 million years ago. They have, in their particular form, outlasted an extraordinary number of changes in the world around them. In the desert at night, they move slowly across the sand, sensing vibrations through sensory organs in their legs, hunting the small insects and other invertebrates that share their hours. There is something notable about scorpions that scientists discovered several decades ago and have continued to study since, without arriving at a fully settled explanation. Under ultraviolet light, the kind produced by certain lamps, and also present to a small degree in natural moonlight and starlight, scorpions glow. Their outer shell, the hard exoskeleton that covers their bodies, contains compounds that absorb ultraviolet light and re-emit it as a faint blue-green glow, visible to the human eye in the dark. Why this happens is not completely understood. Various explanations have been proposed: that it may help scorpions detect light levels in their environment, or that it plays some role in communication between individuals, or that it is simply a consequence of the particular chemistry of their exoskeleton with no specific function of its own. Research continues, quietly and without urgency, as research into these kinds of questions tends to do. What is certain is that on a clear desert night, in the right conditions, the sand is populated by small, softly glowing forms moving slowly in the starlight, each one going about its ancient business, in the cool air, under a sky that is very wide and very still. The desert at night is, in this way, a surprisingly full place, not crowded, not busy, but quietly inhabited by animals that have learned to live within its particular rhythms, animals that wait through the heat of the day and emerge, patient and unhurried, when the conditions become comfortable again. There is a kind of ease in the way they move through it. The kangaroo rat with its small, gentle hops, the elf owl settled in its hollow cactus, the scorpion moving slowly across the sand, carrying its faint glow with it through the dark, the desert night continuing, as it does, in its own quiet and reliable way. By now, somewhere in the forest, the deer has found a quiet place among the trees and lowered itself to the ground. The hedgehog has returned to its nest of leaves and curled into a small, still shape. The kangaroo rat is somewhere deep in its burrow, in the cool earth beneath the desert sand, and the elf owl is settled inside its hollow cactus, its small eyes closed. They are all, in their own ways, asleep, and some of them, scientists now believe, may be dreaming. The idea that animals dream is not a new one. People who have lived closely with animals, with dogs, with horses, with cats, have observed for a very long time the small movements that sometimes accompany animal sleep. The twitching of a paw, the faint flickering of an eye, the barely audible sounds that an animal sometimes makes while lying completely still. These observations were recorded long before there was any scientific framework to explain them. That framework began to develop in the middle of the 20th century. With the study of sleep stages in humans, researchers discovered that human sleep is not a single, uniform state. It moves through several distinct stages over the course of a night, cycling gradually between them. One of these stages, now widely known as REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement, is characterized by a particular pattern of brain activity that is, in some ways, more similar to waking activity than to the quieter stages of deep sleep. During REM sleep, the eyes move beneath their closed lids. The body becomes largely still. Though the reason for this is itself worth noting, the muscles are actively inhibited during this stage, temporarily prevented from acting on the signals they might otherwise receive. It is during REM sleep that humans most commonly experience vivid dreaming. When researchers began examining the sleep of other mammals using similar methods, they found REM sleep there as well. Cats, rats, dogs, and many other mammals show the same characteristic patterns of brain activity during sleep, the same cycling between stages, the same periods of heightened neural activity accompanied by stillness of the body. In rats, the evidence became particularly detailed. Studies conducted over a number of years examined what happens in the brains of rats while they sleep, following sessions where the rats had been navigating a maze. Researchers found that certain patterns of brain activity that occurred while the rats were running the maze-specific sequences of neural firing in the hippocampus, the brain region most associated with memory, appeared again during the rat's subsequent sleep. The patterns were similar enough and consistent enough to suggest that the sleeping brain was, in some sense, replaying the experience of the day. This is not entirely unlike what neuroscientists believe human dreaming may partially involve a process by which the sleeping brain revisits and consolidates the experiences and information accumulated during waking hours. Not randomly, but in a way that appears to serve the organization and storage of memory. Whether rats experience anything subjectively during this process, whether there is something it feels like, from the inside, to be a sleeping rat whose brain is replaying a maze, is a question that science cannot yet fully answer. The inner experience of another creature is, by its nature, difficult to access directly, but the biological processes are there, and they are recognizable. Dogs show similar patterns. A sleeping dog, particularly during the phase of sleep that corresponds to REM, may twitch gently, a paw moving slightly, the muscles of the face briefly shifting, a small sound from somewhere low in the throat. The body is inhibited, as it is during REM sleep in most mammals, but imperfectly so. Small movements come through. What the dog is experiencing during these moments is, of course, unknown, but the brain activity that accompanies these movements is consistent with the kind of activity seen during waking experience. Something is being processed. Something is, in some sense, happening. It is a thought that is easy to sit with and not a troubling one. Simply the recognition that sleep, for most animals that experience it, is not a blank space. It is a time when the brain continues its quiet work, sorting, replaying, consolidating, restoring, doing things that appear to require the particular conditions of sleep to do well. The sleeping mind, in a dog or a rat or a human being, is not absent. It is occupied, in its own way, with something necessary. Rest and the inner life are, it seems, not separate things. They are part of the same continuous process, the same long conversation that a living mind has with itself, carried on through the waking hours and continued in a different register through the night. All over the world, at this hour, animals are sleeping. In forests, in burrows, in hollow trees and shallow nests, and deep ocean water, each one carrying on that same quiet inner process in the particular way their biology allows. Each one somewhere in the slow, reliable cycle of rest that their bodies have always needed and always returned to. And here, in this moment, so are you. Your mind doing its own quiet work, your body settled and still, the night continuing around you, patient and unhurried as it has always done. The night is very quiet now. Somewhere, the forest is still. The deer is settled among the roots of an old tree, its dark eyes closed, its breathing slow and even. The hedgehog is curled in its nest of leaves and grass, its small body warm and still inside the soft hollow it made for itself before the evening began. The moths have found their places among the branches, and the forest floor continues its patient work in the dark, the way it always does, without any need for the day to return. Somewhere, the ocean moves in long, slow swells under the open sky. The plankton drifts near the surface. The jellyfish pulses faintly in the deep water below. The sea turtle, somewhere on its long and unhurried crossing, rises slowly to the surface to breathe, and then descends again into the dark water. Far below, on the ocean floor, nothing is hurrying. Nothing has ever needed to. Somewhere, the desert is cool and still. The kangaroo rat has returned to its burrow, its small stores of seeds tucked safely away. The elf owl is settled in its hollow cactus, its feathers smooth, its breathing quiet. The sand lies pale and undisturbed under the stars, the air cool and dry and very clear. All of it continuing. All of it doing exactly what it has always done on this night and every night before it, for an enormously long time. The natural world does not stop while you sleep. It simply continues in its own way, at its own pace, the slow drift of the ocean, the patient work of the forest, the desert cooling under its wide and quiet sky. There is something restful in that. The world asking nothing, simply present and continuing and calm. You are part of that same night. Your body knows how to rest, the way every living body does, the way the dolphin drifts near the surface with half its mind at ease, the way the small bird sits on its branch with its toes gently curled, the way the rat in its burrow lets the day's experience settle quietly into memory. These are not different things. They are the same thing, in different forms. The universal pause that living things have always returned to, every night, without effort and without hesitation. The night is doing what the night does. It is holding everything gently and asking nothing in return. There is nothing to follow now, no new places to visit, no new creatures to find, only the quiet that is already here, in this room, in this moment, in the slow and steady rhythm of your own breathing. The forest is still. The ocean is wide and dark and calm. The desert lies under its stars, and the night continues, as it always has, in no particular hurry. Warm and slow and very, very quiet.